we can and then oh, there's Laura. She's coming in. So you guys, we do this every quarter. And in the past, Jeff Wald, if you guys have been on in the past, Jeff Wald was kind of our moderator, and he was the guy that built WorkMarket and sold it to ADP. I'm still involved with him a lot because I'm on the advisory board for Boomerang. But then he introduced us to Gail Wilkinson, and she was doing this for a while. But then I went to Marilyn and Mike and Bob because we've worked together for a couple years now, and they actually provide a lot of assistance to our board positioning members by introducing them to startups. And a lot of the board positioning members have gotten startup board roles because of these three people that are going to moderate the two startups we have today. And I'm so excited. These are two amazing startups, very relevant at the enterprise level. Okay. And in the past, I think we've had some concerns about that, but Marilyn and Mike and Bob are going to really make sure that all of these startups that you guys are looking at quarterly are at the enterprise level, and hopefully might need some startup advisors on their board. So with that, I'm going to turn that over. The other thing I want to just mention, because I think everybody knows this, but ESA has three pieces. We offer Thought Leadership Monthly. And so if you're not on our distribution list, let us know. We offer these quarterly, so you can see what the latest in the startup technology is. And then we offer a board positioning membership. And I think several people on here are members of that, and they will say that they have gotten board positions partially because of what we offer in these programs. So great to have everybody here. And Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay.
Thank you very much. And it's my distinct pleasure to introduce everyone to Pierre Rousseau. He's the president of Cloud Connectors. Now, Cloud Connectors is going to be kind of interesting because they do integration work. So a lot of us actually, when we bring our HR technology stack together, the biggest problem that we have is we make all these investments and the stuff doesn't connect and it doesn't work, and we don't know how to make it work. And it's like the number one problem that we actually never see impact or outcomes from. I just want to set two things on the table as Pierre actually walks through what's actually being done and how Cloud Connectors might be a solution here. The first is that if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. I'll keep track of those questions and then I'll queue them up. When you we will have a section of about 10 to 15 minutes after the presentation, but where we will answer questions, and then we'll switch to the second presentation. So during that period, I'll ask you to come off your microphone to ask the question and to participate. Thanks very much, Pierre. If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to hand it over the microphone.
Thank you so much, Mike. So it's a pleasure being here. As Mike said, my name is Pierre Rousseau, president of the Cloud Connectors. I've been in the HR tech space for over 20 years now, and my professional HR tech career started at Taleo when it was called RecruitSoft a long ways ago. And I was working on the services side at Taleo, implemented hundreds of clients, and I was a technical project manager. So I oversaw the integrations with all of the Taleo clients. And at that time, Taleo was great ATS, and they were using what at that time was pretty much the best integration tools that existed. But still, when Taleo made acquisitions and all, it took a very long time to integrate all of these customers. And so for us, when we started Cloud Connectors in 2015, the vision was to build the software that we wish we would have had while we were at Taleo, right? That would save tons of time when you're actually going through a merger acquisition, and it all starts with having a great integration software. So that was the vision when we started Cloud Connectors. So today we're going to discuss the common problems with HR integrations. I'm going to share how we help customers with our innovative approach and technology. Of course, we'll turn it over for Q&A. So some of the problems that we solve, right? And this is stuff that you have heard of, that you have seen, that you've experienced, but most common problems with the HR tech integration. So often it's not a priority on IT's list, right? It's going to take a while. They say, I can start working with you in 6 months from now and 9 months from now. And so it's not priority, right? Uh, Typically, HR people are not that satisfied with the assistance provided by the HR tech vendors, right? Everyone on their checkbox is going to say, of course, we're integrated. But what does it actually do, right? Is it truly a good integration, or is it just a checkbox with just a couple of fields being exchanged between two systems that end up not doing much, right? Lack of in-house integration HR process expertise. So that's lots of different things but as I said, these costly complexity stuff that you've heard of, that you've seen many times before across all of this HR tech stack. So what we see in all of these problems, we call this building your iceberg. So your integration iceberg. And it starts with the wrong question. We feel like, everyone has this question when they shop for a new software. Do you integrate with? To us, that's not the right question. The right question would say, how do you integrate with? And this drives the actual quality of the integrations, right? Usability, scalability, error and handling, right? Once you're live in production, how will it behave? Will it be a nightmare to maintain, or will it be very easy to maintain? So these are, and that's why this, how do you integrate with software X that is the right question, right, to be asking. So how do we help employers? So first of all, we have two different offerings. One is what we call managed integration services, which basically means we use a combination of our software and our services department. So we kind of become the one-stop shop, and we work very closely with HR, right? And HR building processes, integration processes between different systems that they have to streamline and diminish the number of potential errors and reprocess and all that stuff. So we kind of replace IT in a sense. So managed services basically is fast integrations, and of course is whenever you need us, you call us and we'll be building stuff. So that's one. The second one is our state-of-the-art integration platform. It comes in with all of the training tutorials and so you can use it yourself. You can have your own IT guys learn the tool, and we have what we call a training program, and we do some sort of hand-holding, right? So can be self-sufficient, but we like to have a mentor, somebody that's there with you, meeting you every week, asking you, do you have any questions? How are things going? So we have different options for different types of needs, right? If you're talking to HR or if you're talking to IT, so we pretty much leverage both and offer both. So some of the companies that we've done business with, but we have way more. But here are some, of course, logos that you recognize. And here's one that we wanted to highlight is we're going to highlight two of our current clients. One is WildBrain, and WildBrain, you might be wondering, maybe not a name you're familiar with, but it's the Teletubbies. It's Peanuts. They got some great brand names, and they approached us because they were using CGID and they were also using UKG, right? And they wanted to integrate both systems, and they wanted to have state-of-the-art integrations in place. So when we started working with them, and maybe Marlene, next slide, please. Yeah. So before we started working with them, so they had these two softwares that were not connected, of course. So lots of manual processes and required lots of error and reprocessing. So not that great solutions, great softwares, but not talking to one another, not that great, right? Afterwards, we ended up completing the project in about 3 months. It was the cost was less than, of course, if internal resources kept on doing what was in place. And of course, we featured future dating features with UKG and very complex use cases that we were able to implement that made a ton of difference with the actual HR team, right? Real-time data confidence, and at the end of the day, data that they trust. That was truly it, right? So that's what we were able to implement, which now is a game changer for them and streamlines HR processes. Another one that I wanted to highlight is Travel and Leisure, which is a Wyndham company that you might have be familiar with. So big company, right? Lots of complexity, uh, many different integrations across different products, and so and they're using UKG Pro, and that one is kind of funny because when we started working with them, we met them at one of the user conference. We were attending the Aspire UKG Aspire conference, and you know, the booths opened up at 9 and they were there at 9 a.m. and they wanted to talk to us because they wanted they had learned of us, they had heard of us, and they wanted to know more about how we could help them out with their processes. So this one is kind of different. WildBrain, we were the managed services, so we built everything for them, really working closely with their HR team. Travel Leisure had a different story, right? They wanted to have to learn the software and they wanted to build stuff themselves. So before their HRIS team was very not that technical, you know, and about integrations and all, but they wanted to take control, right? And basically, after we started working with them, they became self-sufficient, right? So that was very important for them. They implemented, you know, I'm going to say like over 50 integrations across the board and you know building everything themselves and now they're very much agile doing anything they want and they can integrate any software in their HR tech stack in a heartbeat, right? So that's what they have transitioned over, but it all started with you know a very interesting discussion with them at the UKG Aspire conference. In our integration platform, there's one thing that helps any users on any day-to-day. It's what we call data health. You know, traditionally you will have traditional integrations. An error happens or success happens, an email gets sent out to email recipient, right? With us, of course, that can happen as well. But you can log in our software and you can see what's happening. So we call it data health, and you see all the success. And so you can easily monitor in one centralized place. And that's, you know, you can see it right there. It's easy for anyone to look at. It's not, you don't have to be IT to understand what's happening. So it really helps the end users. And one of the cool features that we implement to go along with this is we try and empower the end users. That's also something that is not really seen in the HR tech space. What we do is when there are problems, we notify the actual HR person, and we at the end of the day say, "Hey, by the way, you just tried to hire, let's say Mike, and unfortunately there was an error because of X, Y, and Z." So instead of traditionally sending an email to IT and saying, "Hey, IT, there's an error, find out what the problem is," we empower the end user. We give them the exact error message, and we say, "Hey, by the way, once this data is fixed, here's a very nice URL. Click on it. It's going to automatically reprocess that error." So lots of time gets saved in that time. So it's all based on the technology, the software that we have, and the expertise and the understanding of the HR tech space and HR folks and their problems, right? So that's all the basis of why we're offering this, but it truly saves tons of time when you have errors, and our users love this functionality. So some stats about cloud connectors. So we've done over 3,300 complex integrations. I would say anyone out there, any integration provider can build simple, straightforward integrations. We shine the most, I would say, when it's complex, right? We can do basic stuff. That's not a problem. But as I said, you got numerous countries, numerous integrations. Sometimes you have one ATS, three HCM systems, right? How do you connect all of them together? That's where we shine the most. We work typically with enterprise clients, right? We have small clients that are smaller than 2,000 employees, but I would say yet again, complexity, large enterprise, typically that's typically where we shine the most. We've been listed on G2's best iPaaS grid since 2020, done a lot of projects and a lot of smart connectors. And the smart connectors, that's where we're able to save time. So I was telling you earlier about our state-of-the-art integration platform. Those connectors that you see here on the screen, once they're pre-built, anyone can see them, can use them, and it saves a lot of time because, and I'm sure some of you have heard of this, but guess what? All of these vendors, they pretty much made sure that their API specifications and integration specifications would not be the same, right? They all their own simple requirements and intricacies, and on our software, you don't know, you don't care. You see a list of fields from either any of these, and you just select them. And so that's the whole technology. If you have more interest in knowing more, we'll be more than happy to show you this. But it saves you a lot of time, and you don't have to read their documentation, understand everything that they've uniquely built for their own software. Our software will just abstract all this.
Thank you so much, Pierre. And we're going to switch to questions here. Marilyn, if you could, what we're going to do is we're going to circulate a link inside the chat window while we're answering questions. And that link is going to be if people want to give some feedback. We will be pulling these feedback things, and they will be anonymized. So the feedback will be helpful for Pierre and for Toby. So the first question that came in is Rick, and Rick told me earlier that he can't get off microphone because he's in a very busy hotel. So I'm going to read his question for you, Pierre.
Sure.
He asked, how do you differentiate your company from other companies who integrate software systems? So how do you scale customized integration, and how can you keep up with integration when you move from 100 customers to 700 customers like you've shown?
Yes. So it all started with the vision that we had, and how did we achieve that scalability and reusability? So the vision that we had, and the moment that made us unique is this. Think about databases when they were invented back in the 70s, right? They also came with SQL, which is a language that everyone uses right now, so that databases right now are able to communicate one another. Integrations, that does not exist. Connecting to APIs, you don't have a unified language. We created that language. It's our IP. We invented that law. It's called cloud data language. And this cloud data language enables us to select from, extract, transform, and load to. So just like SQL query. So that was the basis. Once we had that, then it was the basics. So that's how we differentiate ourselves from the other vendors, is that we don't build point-to-point bespoke integrations. We build integrations that are afterwards, because of also the smart connectors I was showing you earlier. We're able to mass update, mass maintain those connectors to 5, 20, 100 clients, and just push everything's version. And that's how we were able to be uniquely positioned.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I don't see any hands raised yet in the chat. If anyone wants to come off microphone and ask a question, please feel free to. Or if you write a question in the chat, I'll call you.
Say, Mike, I've got a question for Pierre. So you talk a lot about HR teams using this, but it seems to me I'm a big proponent that HR and IT work together very closely. And I would guess that the IT teams also look at this and would it would benefit the IT teams that are really close to HR.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, because
totally.
I kind of went, oh, not just HR, because it's really an IT product, but it helps IT service HR. And so you've got to have the relationship with IT as well.
Totally. And it benefits HR because we help them. It benefits IT because it gives them a very powerful software that they can use to interconnect any of their software that they have within their stack. So yes.
Could you give just a couple examples, or at least one example, of how you've worked with an IT team to help the HR team?
Well, Travel and Leisure is one of the best examples I've got. They have, using our software, they've been able to interconnect Workday, UKG. They use a lot of different solutions. They use Workday as well. So they were able to interconnect all of these different softwares so that their HR processes would be better streamlined, fewer error problems, easier data reprocessing. And so that's one of the good examples. But it's their IT team that used our software with our training. Within a couple months, they were self-sufficient and they were able to build all these integrations. At first, we were there with them and we helped them out. But after a couple months, they started to be self-sufficient and build all of these integrations. Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Pierre, one question. So as a business, is that a subscription, or do you sell the software? How do you make money, if you will, within your services that you provide?
For sure. So it's managed services. Let's go with the first option. Managed services, it's a mix of two things, right? It's going to be services and it's going to be licensing, because once the solution has been built, we're going to maintain it on our software, comes with yearly ARR, recurring fees. If it's just a pure IT solution, so people wanting our software, then they buy a training program for a couple months, right? And then they just pay whatever they use. It's a price per consumption basis, and they pay us on a monthly or a yearly basis, depending on what's the best option. But it's recurring revenue, yes, and it's yearly AR, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I assume you targeted HR because of the integrations that you've already built on your platform, ADP, et cetera, aspect. But to me, it seems like the market is actually so much bigger than just HR. Having run professional services myself, where we did not have our own integration platform and we were trying to build one, and we're not successful at it. I mean, I think that every company has got a professional services arm, any SaaS company, right? And depending on how old the product is and their approach when they built it, integrations are easy or nearly impossible. And it would seem like this, I'm really interested about cracking the code on a new language so you don't have to do the custom one off. But if you've really cracked that code, to me, the market seems so much bigger than just HR.
Totally. And the reason why I mentioned HR is because of one thing. If you look at our 270 pre-built connectors, and it's the vast realm of HR. So what does that mean, right? We got, QuickBooks, HubSpot, Salesforce, assessment vendors, background check vendors, of course, all the HRIS, the ATSs, but it's the vast realm. We could tomorrow have supply chain, yes, fintech. There's a bunch of things that we plan on expanding. It's just that ever so happens that right now we get way more HR projects than others, but the technology can handle any volume, millions of transactions per day, per hour. It's irrelevant, but it's just right now it's more the vast realm of HR.
Pierre, how do you balance this notion of pre-built connectors with maybe differing needs for each connector? So in other words, how do you customize or personalize the connectors for the individual client's needs?
Well, going back to the cloud, the cloud language that we came up with, we can pre-build, for example, templated integrations, but they can be modified during the implementation. So it's not an integration that will be set in stone forever, but you can go ahead. So it kind of becomes more of a mapping exercise. You build an integration that, let's say, that has 50 fields, and then you can go ahead and kind of pick and choose a la carte. You can say, I want to add 5 fields because I have these custom needs, but it doesn't impact the versioning. And also you can still mass manage and mass update any of the integrations. So if you're interested, Jeff, this is something maybe my tech team and maybe our CTO would be able to give you more details. But yes, the goal is to build those templated integrations that can still be updated at runtime, and we can add or remove fields.
Thank you.
There was another question that came in from Rick, and it reads, is this cloud-based integration language you've developed a proprietary language that other companies cannot copy quickly? In other words, what are the barriers of entry for your competitors?
Well, our language, our cloud-based language that we have right now, Cloud Data, is our own unique IP, right? We cannot trademark a language, but we're working on trademarking many other things surrounding it, but a language cannot be trademarked. But right now, yes, there could be some folks that use our software, do reverse engineering, but it's going to take them years, I would say, before they get to where we are. But we're working right now on protecting the whole thing with trademarks. Yes.
Hey, Pierre, when Marilyn first brought this to me, the first thing I said was, oh my gosh, back in the day when we were integrating huge ERPs, which was really to integrate systems and get to data and kind of going building off of what Noel said, I said, well, gosh, you wouldn't need to spend the billions of dollars that we did on an ERP. If you could just use the Cloud Connector software to patch these systems together and be able to get the data. That was always what people needed, right? Was the data out of all these multiple systems. Am I oversimplifying what you do, or am I kind of on the right track?
You're on the right track. And of course, I'm not gonna, there's mapping exercise, there's, you got to lay their foundations, but the technology is gonna be saving you hundreds of hours for sure. Of course, the more complex, as I said, the more, that's where we shine the most. That's what the software is built for, right? Complexity. But yes, you're right. Projects that typically would cost millions of dollars for us, it's not going to be close to that because of the technology and, of course, the whole approach that we take. And mass maintenance, let's be honest, you build integrations, that's one thing. There's a cost associated to it, yes. Whether we do it, you do it, there's going to be a cost building integrations, but the maintenance down the road and the software that we have keeps your maintenance cost this big, truly. And I'm not kidding, because of the whole technology stability. And any of our partners can testify to this, right? They don't have, they have like one guy maintaining 100 clients. And that's reality because of the whole technology and the approach. And so if something breaks, for example, one of the HRIS or HCM software comes up with a new version, well, everything keeps working. We can just upgrade the connector, push it to whomever, whenever we want, without breaking anything. So, lots of thought came into the mindset, but the versioning of everything saves tons of time. And the maintenance costs, it's truly one of our greatest value, I would say, is maintenance costs is just very minimal with us compared to many other integration vendors.
We have two more questions, and then we're going to have to switch. So question number one came in first by Tapankar. Question number two came in from Rob. So Tapankar's question was, does your platform and approach minimize any cybersecurity risks with systems integrations? And then we'll call on Rob to read his question.
Well, we follow all the highest security standards in North America. So we're ICE, we're SOC 2 Type 2, GDPR, and everything that's very important for all enterprise clients and smaller end clients as well. But security is number one priority for us. And so yes, you can say, and you might have heard this, and some of you might not, but having API integrations with a very secure integration platform like ours is way more secure than flat files. And SFTP and PGP encryption, these are less secure because sometimes the files may stay on an SFTP for weeks and months, right? And so API integrations that will run for 30 seconds a minute, collapse, everything gets collapsed. We don't store any data, by the way. We are pass-through, so we move data between different systems, transforms the data, and we just store some primary keys here and there working with you, and that is it. So security, very, very, can't be more secure than that.
And last question from Rob.
I think, Mike, that might have been already somewhat answered, I guess, in Pierre's response around data. I'm just concerned about it. It sounds like you're not actually holding data than Pierre, but rather passing it through. Is there any points of failure, though, as a result of that? And are there solutions, or I guess something recently happened a few weeks ago that was very significant. I think everyone's heard of it. How did that impact you and your clients?
Well, the fact that we are a pass-through, first of all, thinking about GDPR, that type of thing, we're a pass-through, so we don't store any data. So being compliant is easy. Downsides, good question. I can't think of many downsides. Not that much, no.
Is there a way that you're a point of failure, though? Can someone get the data through your system, I guess, even though it's passed along? Is it not another entry point for someone to hack into and obtain information?
Well, every one of our environments uses two-tier authentication. Everything is hashed, encrypted, and so I would like to have one of my security guys answer your question, but no, I would say that their risks are close to none.
I would add that since it's the pass through, if they access data, it's a moment in time. They can't go get a big history of data, so it's not necessarily worth the effort,
Right.
if you will, from the hacker point of view, if you will. There's other things that have a bigger repository.
With that, thank you so much, Pierre. We're going to switch gears. We're going to move on to the second presentation. I'm going to pass the emceeing duties over to Marilyn.
Thank you so
Marilyn?
much, Mike. Thank you, Mike and Bob. Thank you, Cindy, for hosting and for everyone who's attending today. And thank you also for completing the form. That's a little bit different. We're doing the form in the meeting instead of having you fill it out afterwards, which is what we've done in the past. So it is my honor and pleasure to introduce you to Toby Harris, the Chief Customer Officer of Filtered. And really, as we continue to get educated and understand what the new and cutting edge offerings are in our space, Filtered comes to the table with the intersection of three really interesting areas right now. The area of content, which is being produced at scale, unlike any other time in our history, in our lifetime, at the intersection of innovation relative to generative, and also at the intersection of skills. And we've been hearing a lot about this, and everyone's really, I think, in the question of how and in what ways can we put these things together in an intelligent way for our organizations. One of the things that caught my eye about Filtered is it's the AI platform to solve content chaos. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Toby.
Thank you for that very warm intro, Marilyn. I really appreciated that, and I'm glad that you share our excitement for the possibilities in this space. And yeah, as you rightly put it, this is an area that's really important, I think, to get to grips with, which is AI, content chaos and skills. We have a lot of experience in that, and my team, as a customer success team and the implementation team, is right at the forefront.
It's called.
I think carry on. Was right at the forefront of using these technologies. So this is going to be hopefully a very practical little session where I'm going to take you through some tools that we use and our own platform to show you how this can be done. I just want to kind of highlight my session title here and explain the challenge which we're seeing, which is what I call the double revolution that's happening, which is it's about skills and a transition to a skill-based organization. But it's also being driven by generative AI adoption. So this is a very recent survey released from January of this year for 100,000 knowledge workers in Denmark. It's discussed by Ethan Mollick. I've put the link on here, or you can Google it. His blog is called One Useful Thing, and it's a really good way to keep to kind of keep up with developments in AI. But you can see here on the right-hand side, we're getting to a level of 60, 70, 80% adoption of generative AI tools like ChatGPT in organizations in Europe. I was really interested to see where HR professionals ranked in this, because we hear anecdotally there's not that much adoption, at least in some companies and some sectors, because people are worried about using it in a work setting. But you can see that HR professionals are quite well represented in terms of using generative AI. And again, that intensity of usage, you can see that software developers have used it in the last 2 weeks. And so this means something important for skills, right? It means we need to revisit how we define skills quite quickly, because the skills are changing quickly. For example, if you take developers or data scientists or modelers, they're probably going to need to use a skill called coding in Python, right? They're probably going to need to use Python language. Now, just 18 months ago, the syllabuses for Python would have been pretty stable, and every big company would have had a Python academy that they built and a pathway But right now, every developer in the world is using generative AI in one way to do with Python. Now, it's not really advised often to use Gen AI to write Python. Sometimes it's used to review the code or to explore avenues. But actually, that Python skill now looks a bit more like monitoring or validating Gen AI results using, Python as a language. And so this AI adoption piece is now transforming all of our skill frameworks. And this produces a problem, right? Because we've now have to very rapidly revisit the skills that we're developing. I don't know, it might be worth having a quick poll if people want to put stuff, answers into the chat, but I'm hearing a lot that skill-based organizations are not quite where people are at, because people see skill-based as, rewarding people purely based on skills, and people still see this important role for, job roles, so to speak. So I don't know if anyone in the organization is in the room, feels like they're transitioning to a skill-based organization, or whether they're more kind of skill-powered in that, do our users really need to know about skills, or do they just need to know what is a development pathway for them to get where they want to be? So yeah, I'd find it interesting if, as I go, if people want to put any comments in the chat about whether they are, kind of going to being fully skill-based or just skill-powered. Regardlessly of all of that, the challenge that we have is, I think, comes down to the speed at which we can now work to map skills and to prioritize skills. I've included what typical skill framework definition looks like. This one, and the links at the bottom there, is the Singapore Public Sector Skill Framework, which is super comprehensive. And it's a completely free resource. So it's a really good place to look if you're interested in trying to find benchmarks. But you look at that piece of work, and it's all been manually done, of course, and it's just massive, right? And most of us don't even have this. We have competency-led frameworks that aren't really about skills, because they simply don't define skills that are portable between roles. They look at tasks and competencies as they break down role by role. If we want to be skill-based and kind of benefit from the changes that technology and AI is bringing, everywhere Filtered sees this rapid need to amend and update skill frameworks. And we have been looking, and to give you a flavor of this, our customers tend to be very large enterprises. So we work with Cigna, Schlumberger, Anglo American, Procter & Gamble, Novartis, AstraZeneca, companies of that size, Shell, Diageo are also ones on the list. And they all have very similar problems, which is they can't define updated skill frameworks at the speed at which is necessary to implement them, to implement some kind of strategy, to put skills against roles, to put content against those skills, and to create pathways for people. By the time they finish defining the frameworks, which usually take up between 2 and 6 months, the needs has itself changed. And so as a result, they fall at the first hurdle, and that's the first example. Beyond that, we can also use AI to help with the next stages of this, which is mapping the skills that you defined against roles and curating relevant learning against them. So I'm going to switch my screen now to a demo to show how we can use AI to help with one of the first piece of this. So this is something that's very simple. It's something that we do. We actually will do it for you for free. If you want, I'll pop this link in the chat if anyone wants to jump in and do this. Meet group chat, there we go. Which is use generative AI, use GPT-4 to build a skill framework kind of on the fly in a much faster turnaround. We recently did a project with Shell where we manually generated a framework alongside their team by consolidating existing frameworks. And it took us about 2 months of arduous work. We then used this tool, which we built in the meantime using Gen AI, and ran the same process and got to a framework that was 83% similar without any of the proprietary information from the company being supplied in about 2 weeks. So I'm going to show you now, and I'm not going to make this that interactive because I feel like I don't have that much time with the demo, but we could obviously go in. But let's say we could take say a pharma company, or maybe let's say a tech services company, and we could say it's 10,000, several business units, and we could say it is moving to a digitally let's say, digitally fluent operating model or something like that. And we could say no current skills inventory. And what my team and our product team focus on is how we basically make the most of tools like Gen AI, which can be very powerful. I'm sure most people have used it to define one-off skills, but actually to define a whole framework of 130 skills in about 13 categories, that's a bit harder. One of the key things I want to share is that if you want to get useful outputs, you need to kind of step your prompt engineering. So you need to pause every point and basically ask for validation, which is what this does. Please go ahead, sorry. And now it's going to go ahead and check that I don't want to add any more. And then it's going to go ahead and build the categories of skill groups piece by piece. And it's going to give me definitions. And at any point, I can modify this. And I might want to say, for example, increase the importance of AI skills, of Gen AI skills in this group. And if you can imagine, this is one of the big challenges we have is how do we operate at scale and consistency of our skill framework definitions? And you can see it's easily able to improve its relevance in terms of, in a very nuanced way, like pushing for those AI skills as they fit in specifically to this framework. And I can proceed on and kind of develop the whole framework. So this is just something that we can share in terms of a general tool, which you can pick up and use. And like I said, this link will allow you to do that, and we'll be able to generate you a framework, and you'll be able to put in some information to personalize it to your organization. The filtered specifics technology, and this is what has taken us through as a key partner in the skill transformations of companies like Cigna, in particular recently, is being able to apply this kind of Gen AI technology to the task of mapping. So let's say once we've generated our skill framework and we have a kind of a group of skills that we want to use, we then usually have a task which is mapping them against all the existing job profiles in the organization, mapping them against all the existing content in the organization, and then pulling all those things together. So we actually are doing a curating the right pathways to make sure that we actually have the kind of architecture that might make it possible for one person to progress in one role to another in exactly the way that we want to do from a skill strategy, but which often kind of falls down. So if I were to take some of the items that we've generated, the filtered technology is, and this instance is about job role mapping, is basically there to allow you to rapidly define and then map content against the skills that you might have generated. And so I'm just going to do this by hand, but for our proof of concepts and the work with customers, we would obviously load this stuff in bulk. So I can very easily create a skill. Now, the algorithm kicking in now is not based on generative AI. It's almost like one half of a language model. All it does is take this skill name, the skill definition, and then encode it against a massive model, which then can compare it against different items. And in this case, we're just piloting this, but we're basically using job roles to see if we can do this mapping that way. And in doing so, we produce a relevance score. And so I can now basically take any of these skills in my framework, and I might have lots and lots of different areas, and I can look at the job roles that have come up as a top match of this. And this is just a small POC, and I'm just going to show the final outputs here for this little POC, where we were able to take a few of these job roles of this company and then basically come up with the top matching skills programmatically in a very accurate way. There is a lot of automated mapping stuff on the market, but not much of it can get anywhere close to the level of accuracy that we can with this approach. You say, one key area we think is mapping that skill framework against kind of job roles, but it's going to get more interesting, I think, if we start looking at how we might map content against this. So another area that generative AI is really useful is in generating leveled skill frameworks. So often you'll have a situation, and thinking of Pierre's talk, where you're trying to integrate two systems, and one system has a different leveling taxonomy to the other one. And so suddenly you'll have, like, you know, 200 or 300 skills that have 6 levels, and then you need 200 or 300 that have 4 levels, and you have a lot of work to do. We struggled with leveling for a while, but we found a combination of generative AI and filtered algorithm, which takes that and indexes content against it using a relevance score, is really powerful. So we found there were certain linguistic patterns, verbs that were used, and also key terms like key domain areas, that actually distinguish really well between a basic skill. So you can see the different different nouns being used here, different domain knowledge, an intermediate skill up to an expert skill, and you can see this kind of appearing here, and then a very advanced skill, which is now looking more at kind of the ethical issues involved in AI. And this is a really nice example of where, and again, it's another AI tool that we built using generative AI, is a leveling tool where you give it any number of skills and the requisite levels of taxonomy, and out they come consistently. This is such a good use for Gen AI, because Gen AI is a really, really powerful, like, knowledge connector, right? Like, it can kind of connect these different diverse sets of knowledge together and kind of make them produce structured output. And the beauty of the use cases like this is you're not really generating content, so there's no IP risk here. You're just doing a job, you know, you're generating the mappings that you need. So once you have your framework, and you need to map and curate learning pathways against it. So again, if I take another one of these skills that I might have developed, the strength of the filtered platform is to take that and turn it into highly relevant matched assets. And so this is basically taken this exact definition and produced a score between 0 and 1, which is now connecting this particular term with this particular course from Coursera. And so if, for example, I was to take my framework and throw it into here, I could look in the browse section, and let's say I've just configured a piece around AI readiness. I can basically take all these custom skills that I would have developed and then match them and find exactly the pathways of relevant content that are here in my existing content set. And so in that way, in terms of that pipeline of work, you can go from having no framework, no prioritized skills, and no agreement, to something new which accommodates the latest trends and which works with your organization's priorities. You can then take that and, you know, map it against the important roles to understand which skills you should focus on. And then you should take those focus skills, and using the filtered indexing technology, you can map it against the most relevant content and produce pathways. And I know I should finish the demo now, but just to kind of finish on a provocative note as well, we can also roll up this tagging to produce an overall analysis of all of the content in your library to see what is a good match against each group of skills. So you can see this pie chart changing here. It's based on overall relevance of all the skills in these groups and how they map to the content in each library, so we can see what's the best fit. So I'm gonna stop there. I'm sure there's some questions and some commentary, and yeah, I'll pause there, I think. Thank you.
So we had one question come in, Marilyn, and we had one comment come in. If you want to actually call those out, those were
why
in
don't we do that? Let me do this too. While we're also beginning our process of feedback and questions, I'll put in a new link for you. So if you gave some feedback to Pierre for the Cloud Connectors, this is a new link for giving some feedback to Toby of Filtered. And let me just go up here. Rick, you've got a, let's see. Actually, Dipankar, oh, by the way, on the form itself too, as you're giving feedback for Toby, the 1 is low and the 6 is high on the 6-point scale. So I missed that a little bit earlier. So the comment here from Tapankar is most companies are at early stages of being skill-based, given the challenges of mapping the roles in a consistent manner across the organization. So it's really more of a comment. Toby, any reflections along those lines? Does that kind of tie into the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, I think that is exactly the problem that we're focused on, is that organizations want to be skill-based to get the benefit of retaining the right talent and moving the right people into the right roles, and just providing meaningful development, as well as the broader challenge of adapting to a changing world. But their organizations are experience-based, they're role-based. They hire a IT project manager, and they want someone who's been an IT project manager. And this drives up costs and it reduces people's flexibility. So there's a cultural issue and a challenge around identifying and moving to a skill-based organization. I think one important thing to point out is that in a kind of competency-led organization, you're not necessarily going to get everyone to embrace a new skill framework. And you might indeed, you might want to use an off-the-shelf existing skill framework. But the main point is that this is almost like a means to an end. Like what you're trying to do is to be able to build role-based pathways that allow people to progress in the organization. And that requires skills to connect those roles, but they don't have to be skills everyone knows or agrees on, right? The skills can kind of be behind the scenes. You don't have to have this fully comprehensively accepted skill-based framework to say, provide someone in one role with a clear pathway about how they can progress to the next role. But you do need a skill framework, and you need to map content in order to be able to do that.
So it sounds like you allow it to be kind of working in the background, and the important stuff, the actual pathways themselves in the foreground. And kind of continuing on that note too, because Rick, always appreciate your comments and questions. Rick's comment here is question, I find that companies do not always have a common or consistent language for articulating skills. Do these skills you mentioned come from a well-accepted taxonomy of accepted skills to provide a common language? So
yeah, we've used for example a company called Lightcast to provide data. We also incorporate other sources where existing skill frameworks exist. The common and consistent language is the thing you achieve, I think, in your differentiator too, right? So I think it's not necessarily the right approach to say we've covered all the skills, we've got everything, it's all in this framework. You actually need to be able to focus on, for a large organization, probably no more than 1,000 skills, and often it's a case of picking just 2 or 3 top ones and curating pathways against it to emphasize what you need to do. So I do think there's a need to get to a common language in that sense if you're going to unite the organization around it. But we are really based on generating skills and finding skills that are customized to fit the needs of organizations, because after all, it is kind of what makes your organization different and unique, the fact that it's a different flavor to your skills.
and then continuing on, thank you for that. That's helpful. Toby, are the skills specified at a level that are actionable?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, exactly. So if I take, for example, we have this, we integrated Gen AI into our kind of search area with a specific briefing, which is always trying to, I completely agree that often skills in most systems are not defined at a level that's actionable. So in most content systems, you'll have like a group like leadership, and then within that, there'll be several hundred assets. It's also leadership in Excel is also the most common search term in every LXP, right? In every LMS we look at, and you just get thousands of results. So AI can be so powerful in actually bridging that gap, right? So we just briefed here generative AI to every time I put something in to suggest a breakdown of topics, right? And I can take this all the way through to a completely different situation. Like I want to say, if I start again, say I want to organize a get together for my remote team, and I'm worried they won't come. And we can take that and basically try and extract the skills from that, translate that into more, findable terms, more searchable terms. So I think there's a real power here in taking situations, problems, and using Gen AI to turn those search terms into something helpful, and then filter its algorithm with the relevance scores is really coming in to kind of put together the other piece of the puzzle. So right now, a lot of what we're doing is talking to customers who have generative AI assistants already and opening up our API to them so that they can just find the right content from their systems and when people are talking to chatbots about this kind of stuff.
Very good. So Laura here read my mind as well on a question. And over here, I don't think we have the form link in here. Okay, so you're working with large enterprise companies right now already, and they have system of record for their people data as well. So if we set that as the context, I'm curious about how the platform and the framework can link to other existing tools, because chances are what you're doing is more sophisticated in its taxonomy than what resides or is all different, especially if you have more than one system of record, which many companies do.
Yeah.
So how do we blend that all together?
Yeah, absolutely. And then this is something I'd love to talk more about and share some discussions. But one of the integrations that we have is with a system called Degreed. We also have an integration with Edcast, and we work with other customers. But to the point of the previous discussion, what does it do? What's the point of this integration? What job is there to be done here? What we do is we focus on pulling all the content from these systems, because often they've done a good job in aggregating the content. So if we have a Degreed integration, for example, we can pull all of your assets from Degreed in one go into our system, and then you're free to kind of have a look around and tag them. And what we can then do is tag that content, right, using our algorithm. And we actually, or build pathways, for example, and we push that tag content and those the tag content and those pathways back into Degreed. So we basically come in where a lot of these systems have quite dull and kind of muddy tagging, in that there might be a million billion things tagged with project management, and all that's kind of the same, and it's a bit fuzzy because the AI is just not very precise. We're coming in with this really measurable, controllable, precise AI to insert specific tags, and then also to curate specific pathways, which we can also import from other systems. So if I wanted, I could add them from Degreed, and we can publish this stuff back into Degreed as well in this example, to act as a kind of power tool to clarify the connections. And that is what enables those broader integrations. So for one customer, they're implementing Phenom as a career marketplace, a career planning tool. Without the filtered integration, people were reporting that only 1 in 10 of the assets recommended in Phenom, because Phenom is linked to Degreed, were actually relevant to achieving that job role. What we did was we took the 800 priority skills for the organization, we refined the definitions, loaded them into filtered, applied those tags into Degreed. We tagged just 10% of 300,000 assets with skills. This would have taken, we calculate, 17,000 hours for a human to do, right, to go through all of those assets and all of those skills. And then we loaded those tags into Degreed, so they were pulled into Phenom, and the result was that users reported that 8 out of 10 recommendations were actually relevant. So there wasn't that much kind of QA to do. So we are coming in basically as a specific tool to make sure that the data points connecting these systems, i.e. the tags, are accurate. So when you move the tags between those systems, you're not creating noise and junk, you're kind of creating harmony and a better user experience. That's how we fit in. Of course, very happy to talk more at more length about this with schemata and stuff like that.
Toby,
So
thank you.
Marilyn, we're at time.
Yes.
So thanks everybody, Marilyn, Mike, Toby, Pierre, Bob. I think Bob's still on, and everybody that joined. It was a great session. Look forward to more information, and I will send out the recording and any slides you guys want to include. I can send those out as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.